everybody, my name is Victoria. Welcome back to my channel, and today we're going to be talking about my new favorite trilogy, Mistborn by Brandon Sanderson. The first section of this video is going to be non-spoilery thoughts, so if you haven't read any of Mistborn, you should be safe to watch at least the first half of the video, and then I will let you know when we start talking about spoilers, and then you should definitely click away if you have not read Mistborn. The Mistborn trilogy follows our main character, Vin, who has been a street urchin for most of her life. She's just a tiny little scrap of a lady who has survived in her life just by being tougher than everybody else and by joining with different thieving crews. Vin lived with her brother Reen for a while, and he has instilled in her a deep sense of paranoia and distrust about everyone else around her. She very much has this mentality that she has to fend for herself and nobody else can help her. Nobody else is going to look out for her except for herself. Vin lives on a planet called Scadrial, and when we meet her, she is in the kingdom of Luthadel. And this world has some strange idiosyncrasies to it. There is consistently ash falling from the sky. The sky is also red. The plants are brown. So from our perspective, it doesn't look like a healthy planet. It looks like a planet that is dying. Some people in this universe are born with what's called allomancy or allomantic powers, and you find out more about how that works as you read, but it's basically metal-based magic, so they can swallow bits of metal and then burn them, and then when they burn them, they get this power that comes from the metals. Which, when I first started reading it and learning about how that worked, I was kind of weirded out by it because I was like, okay, all these people are like eating metal. They're gonna get lead poisoning. Someone's gonna get lead poisoning. But you know, it's fantasy, so no one gets lead poisoning. They're fine. You have to kind of just go with the magic system for a while because you don't necessarily understand everything up front, and that's part of the big reveals in the series is how everything works and how it comes together. So you just have to kind of go with it and trust in the powers of Sanderson. Vin meets a group of allomancers, and they have this ultimate goal to overthrow the Lord Ruler, who is basically the main antagonist. Vin is trained by the leader of this group named Kelsier, and Vin discovers through Kelsier's help that she has some powers of her own, and I won't talk more about that because that's kind of a spoiler. I think you would have more fun just discovering what her powers are. Something that really stuck out to me about the first Mistborn book was the very fast-paced action-adventure way that this book reads. It's very compelling from the beginning, and it doesn't waste any time hooking you. It really gets to the action very quickly. My husband is actually currently reading it. That's why the bookmark is in there. So he's about halfway through. But he is really loving it, and I put it in his hands because I thought he could follow along with the action a lot more. I was not sure I wanted to let him read the Stormlight Archives first, even though he kind of asked. He was like, should I just read Way of Kings? Because he knew that I was doing the read-along of the Stormalong 2020. So I told him, no, let's not have you do that. Let's have you try this first, because he's never read high fantasy before. And so I do think this is a great starting series for people who are otherwise maybe a little bit more unfamiliar with the genre. In fact, he loves this, and he's kind of mad at me that I'm filming right now because he wanted to read this while I was filming, and I was like, I need it. I'm going to hold it up in my video. And he was sad. But don't worry, I'm going to give it back to him as soon as I'm done filming, and he can read to his heart's content. But yes, he's very hooked by it. So as someone who is not really a self-proclaimed reader, the fact that he likes it, I think, speaks to its accessibility. There's lots of witty banter and fun characters. I enjoyed the dynamics between all of the characters. Also, I think Sanderson does some really great things with this plot. He turns things on their head. Lots of unexpected surprises that I couldn't have seen coming from a mile away as I was reading it. And so he just does a great job of surprising you and putting in lots of fun twists. Sanderson also does a lot of good world building, but he avoids info dumps for the most part. There were maybe one or two instances where I felt like we got an overload of information at once. So for the most part, he's really good at giving you little bits of information as you're reading, which I appreciate. I like to be able to kind of get that information in more bite-sized chunks because it's really hard to just like get a bunch of info dumped on you. The first Mistborn book is actually my second favorite in the trilogy, and I kind of struggled with that idea for a little bit, but I think the reason why is because The Well of Ascension is my favorite. And I appreciate this one because it opens the world up in a much bigger way. Mistborn, we're very much in the same kingdom for a little while. The first book definitely focuses on Luthadel and everything happening there. And The Well of Ascension really shows us how big the world is, and we get to just see a lot of the politics that are happening on this planet and different kingdoms. So I enjoyed the way that the second book really built upon the world that we met in the first book. The second book also ends on a crazy cliffhanger, and you just get your heart ripped out and then kind of put back in your chest, and you're just left at the end of the book going, what the heck just happened? The Well of Ascension is also a lot more about the moral questions that the characters face and their internal dilemmas, and that's something I just really enjoy. This one is my top favorite. So that means my least favorite was actually the third book, but that's not to say that I didn't enjoy it or that it was bad. It was not bad. I thought actually it wraps up really well. I thought the concluding decisions that Sanderson made a lot of sense, and I thought it was a really satisfying ending, and overall you walk away with everything wrapped up really well, and so I really liked this one. I think my problem with this one was more just the journey getting to that, because I do think there were some meandering parts of this book, parts that just dragged on a little bit more than they probably needed to. And I did feel like we did get a lot of info dumped on us towards the end. And so that kind of slowed down my reading process in this. So it was more of, I think, like a pacing thing with this book. It was just a little bit wonky with the pacing, but honestly, not anything I can complain about that much because it was still really fascinating and compelling. I might be in the minority of not liking this one as much, but I'm not sure. But I do really enjoy how this whole series wrapped up. Just the way all of the puzzle pieces fit together is just mwah. So if I had to rank them, I would probably say Well of Ascension as my favorite one, and then Mistborn as my second favorite, and then Hero of Ages as my bottom tier, I guess, even though that's not really fair to say. It was still awesome. That is the end of my non-spoiler section. The rest of this video is spoilers. So if you watched this far, thank you for being here, and be sure to click away now because I do not want to spoil you at all, because you need to experience this series in all of its wonderfulness, and it's just a great time, and I hope you pick it up if you've been interested in it. So thank you for watching. Goodbye. And I love you. Was that too forward? Probably. But it's true. I love you all. Alright guys, let's talk about some spoilery thoughts. So there's so much we could talk about, and I'm really concerned this video is going to be way too long. But we're just going to talk and see how it goes. I think I'm going to approach this by talking about some themes in the series and then seeing where the conversation takes us from there. So I think one of the more obvious themes in this trilogy is to never stop fighting for what is right, even when the odds are stacked against you and it feels like evil is winning. There are many instances in this series where it does feel like the evil forces are going to win, and you just have no idea as a reader what's going to happen. And many times I would just think to myself, I have no idea how they're going to get out of this. There's so many parts of this series where it's one step forward and two steps back. For example, they defeat the Lord Ruler, but it creates a chain reaction and they accidentally release ruin into the world, and it begins the decay of the universe. Also, they gain control over Luthadel. Elend can finally put into practice some of his ideals about how to run a government, but it's not embraced by the nobility, and in fact, it just creates more problems and more confusion. And then the confusion leads other kingdoms to come and break down their door, and then it leads to a siege. So there's just always something else. Our heroes never get to rest, and there's just always more work to be done, and that work just keeps piling and piling up. But Kelsier has left this imprint on them, And so they're always asking themselves, what would Kelsier do? Would he have given up? Heck no. He would have kept fighting for his ideals. And so our characters really embody him after he dies, and they want to carry that through. They want to do right by his memory and his intentions, and it just goes to show like what a charismatic leader Kelsier would have been to have that kind of influence even after he died. So even when our characters find themselves kind of cornered, they always manage to find a way out of it by thinking outside the box, and also a lot of the times they have to make sacrifices that are very personal to them, and they have to kind of change their mentality and change the way that they look at a situation. Speaking of Kelsier, let's talk about him for a second, because that is an interesting character. So even though Kelsier dies in the first book, side note, don't worry, Julio is far away, so he can't hear me talking, or at least I told him to go far away and put in headphones, so I really didn't want to spoil him because he just started the series. Kelsier's legacy permeates everything around him, and he even has a religion form around him. So here's where you could speculate a little bit, and I don't know how much of this is real or how much of this is actually there, but I did wonder if like Kelsier was supposed to be a Christ-like figure, if Sanderson was making that comparison, because it does seem like after he dies, he has disciples who carry out his mission, and then this whole religion forms up, and it's all about like, you know, getting Kelsier's message out there. So I was like, this seems very Christ correlated. However, we do know that Kelsier is not a deity, that he was just a man, and so I think that's where, depending on who you are, that analogy might fall apart a little bit, because if you're a Christian, you believe that Jesus was a deity. So I don't know, it was just some thoughts I had. I wonder if Brandon Sanderson was exploring that idea, and maybe even the idea of like Jesus not being a deity. I don't know what Brandon Sanderson like really thinks about all that himself, so this is just speculation. But what I loved about what he did with Kelsier's character was he showed that a martyr can really change the course of events, and also a charismatic leader can really unify a people group who otherwise would not be able to unify themselves. Kelsier has a very deep understanding of how the ska work and what they respond to and what they would need to rise up and rebel. And so it's just really interesting how he kind of had this big plan that he didn't even share with anyone else around him, but he knew what the chain of reaction would be just by knowing how people work. I was just really blown away by that whole idea, and that Kelsier would have been like smart enough and savvy enough to know that about society. I mean, I assume that Kelsier didn't know that there would be like a religion forming around him, but I would think he did expect the ska to just want to have faith in something bigger than themselves, and that's what they really needed to inspire each other. The other character that Sanderson uses a lot to explore the nature of religion is Sazed, and I don't know how you say that name, but I say Sazed, so if you have a different pronunciation in your head, I'm sorry. I'm gonna say Sazed in this video. Sazed is so great because he has all of this head knowledge of religions, and he knows hundreds and hundreds of religions that he has stored up over the years and has traveled the world to learn, and yet he's searching and he is looking for truth. In fact, the more head knowledge he has, the more confused he is. I think Sazed's search for purpose makes him an incredibly relatable character to any reader, and he's just a character who's very easy to sympathize with and identify with. His faith is shaken when Tyndwyl dies, which I think a lot of us can relate to, just having something tragic in our lives happen and it shakes everything we believe in. It shakes us to the core. So I think a lot of people can see something in Sazed that they can relate to. And can I just brag for a second? Because Rainey and I buddy read this series together, and we kind of predicted that Sazed was the hero of ages. And what kind of gave that away was just at the beginning of the Hero of Ages, because just the way that the sections before the chapters were written and like the tone of voice that was used. There's a moment when he said, "I am, unfortunately, the hero of ages." And I just knew that was Sazed's voice because I didn't know of any other characters that would like talk like that. It was just an inkling we had, so we totally predicted it. Through Sazed, we also learn about Furukami, which, again, no idea if I'm actually pronouncing that right, but that's a fascinating magic system too. I loved the differences between all of the three. So you have Allomancy, Furukami, and Hemalurgy, I don't know. And all of these magic systems have a power balance or power imbalance in them. So with Furukami, you have to give away power in order to receive. Like your strength would have to be sucked away for you to store up more strength. So there was always a give and take. And I just found that kind of like straight, hard line in a magic system to be a great thing that you could work with in a story. And then Hemalurgy as the example of when that negative aspect takes over, right? It is a magic system that's based on destruction and based on death. And Marsh was one of my favorite characters in the book, and I just wanted him to be okay in the end. He isn't really okay in the end, which was really sad to me, but it did do a good job of showing like the all-corrupting power of Hemalurgy and how really like there just was no turning back from that. Like destruction was just part of that. And poor Marsh, even though he had an extremely strong will, he still couldn't hang on to most of his humanity. It was taken away in the end, and he just could not control it. So he was just completely given over to evil. He's a very tragic character, and I really wish it had gone differently for him, but I can see why Sanderson had to follow his own rules and, you know, kind of just show like, nope, Inquisitors, no going back from that. You're pretty much gone. You're evil. The Chondra were also really fascinating examples of Hemalurgy and just the fact that they were like part of that system as well, because they weren't harmful in themselves and they could be used to do good, but they also were tools for harm and evil. Just depended on who was using them. And so ultimately they were part of that system too, and so they have to be destroyed as well. Okay, let's talk about the very, very ending of The Hero of Ages and some of the decisions that were made in the conclusion of the series. I liked the decisions for the most part. I love how once Marsh kills Elend, well, I didn't love that part, but I love that when Elend dies, Vin discovers and realizes that her true power over Ruin is her love and is love for Elend, and that Ruin would never be able to understand that. He would never be able to put himself in the shoes of someone who's capable of loving. And you know, you could argue that like the whole love wins over evil trope is maybe a little bit overdone sometimes. However, I think it's fundamental to humanity and is how most humans live their lives. Most of us strive to do good and to be good and to love others. And so I think it is an overall message that most readers are really gonna love and appreciate. We live for the people we love, and evil forces can't understand that because they're not capable of love. So that's why Ruin doesn't expect Vin to sacrifice herself to kill him. He would never think that way himself, so he is totally thrown off guard when she does that, and it's really the only way that he could be defeated because he could not anticipate that. I'm gonna be honest, I thought it was a little bit cheesy that Vin and Elend like died together and everything, but I will say there's a serious lack of married couple representation in literature and like strong married couples. I feel like if you have a married couple in literature, a lot of the times they're either like somebody's parents or they just don't like have a good marriage, or maybe they don't even have a big place in the book. I feel like a lot of times our main characters are single, right? And they're not married. So just to have a strong married couple who like sacrifices for themselves and supports each other and loves each other no matter what, I thought that was just so refreshing to see in literature. I feel like you don't always get that with your main protagonist. So I really liked that. I also love how Sazed picks up the shards of preservation and ruin, and he kind of puts them together and becomes harmony. I just thought that made a lot of sense with the whole like balance theme in the series. We have to have both destruction and creation working together in order for anything to be done and for worlds to be created. Things have to die, you know, it's just like the cycle of life kind of thing. And I also love that Spook gets to become a Mistborn, because the poor guy, I feel like the whole time he just really wanted to be someone. He really wanted to make a difference in the world, and he was always just like this underdog character. I do really love what we did with Spook in the third book, and that we gave him his own storyline and gave him a purpose, and he gets to be powerful in the end. So yay for Spook. I've been talking for a really long time, and there are more things we could talk about in Mistborn, but we're gonna leave it there for now, and I hope you enjoyed my review of the series. I gave all of the books 5 stars. I loved the whole series, and I really want to get maybe some nicer covers. I like those white UK editions. These are okay, but I might get something, at least maybe the hardbacks or something, because I do want to reread these. I already have like dirt on them and stuff, so I might get some nicer copies of them. And I'll definitely keep you posted on how Julio likes the series. Maybe we'll have him do his own review once he's done with the first book. I think that would be fun. I cannot wait to reread these in the future, and I have a feeling I'm going to be like picking up all these things that I missed the first time completely. So I'm very much looking forward to that. Let me know down below in the comments which of the 3 books was your favorite and why. I hope you're having a wonderful day and that you are doing well. Please consider subscribing if you want to keep up with my bookish journey. Keep reading great books, and see you next time. Bye!